What's up, gangsters? It is a fine winter afternoon here at Rube Goldberg Enterprises, and I thought I would take a little break from watching NFL football. I have to specify NFL because I know some of you across the pond types watch that other game. But anyway, I thought I'd take a break from that and do a quick video because, as often happens, there's a particular topic that's popped up a few times recently on model making social media that inspires me. And I love busting myths, and that's what this topic is about. And our hobby is full of myths. Future can do everything. You absolutely must use all-clad gloss black base enamel underneath their metallics. And one of my personal favorites, you have to use a gloss layer before you do decals. Revell new tool kits aren't too bad. You know what I'm talking about. There's all kinds of myths in our hobby. Oh, another one I love. Tamiya X20A is just isopropyl alcohol. Anyway, those are some of my favorite myths that come up a lot. But there's another one that shows up a lot. And it's the idea that there's this magical upper limit for a rotary tool that you use with styrene of 5,000 RPM. Sorry, I'm still distracted from football, I guess. The Cowboys just barely snuck out a win, and I'm still in La La Land over that. Anyway, so yeah, 5,000 RPM. What's up with that? Everybody says, I mean, you see it all the time. People start talking about, what kind of rotary tool should I buy? Should I get a Dremel? Should I get a Proxxon? Should I get a Fordham? Whatever. And inevitably, there's one or two guys that pop up and say, oh, well, 5,000 RPM is too fast. It melts plastic. Don't get a fill in the blank. And the fact is that it's a myth. And I am about to demonstrate exactly why. So here we go. Okay, so let's just talk about the idea that 5,000 RPM is too fast and that it automatically melts plastic. The thing to understand is that when it comes to machining operations, it's really more about cutting speed than it is about RPM. Cutting speed is the actual velocity that a blade travels through a material. And in the case of a round cutting bit, like this bit right here, it's a function of RPM and diameter and the shape of the blade itself. It's also a function of travel. In other words, how fast you're moving through the material as you cut. But that's not really too much of an issue with the kind of work that we're talking about here, where it's all freehand. Anyway, the point being here, the most important thing is that it is not purely a function of RPM. What it really comes down to is friction. The more friction you have, obviously, the hotter things get, the more likely you are to melt the material that you're working on. Now, with cutting tools, friction mostly comes from not having sharp tools. Bottom line is, if you're not cutting, you're rubbing, and that's a bad thing. So, the number one thing you can do to keep yourself from melting your workpiece is to have good, sharp, clean tools. Aside from that, then the next thing is pressure. Obviously, the more pressure you apply, the more friction you're going to have, and again, the hotter things will get. So, let me just demonstrate how that can work in your favor. Now, this is a Proxxon. This is the Micromott EF50, which I use and love on a daily basis. Now, you can see that the speed control goes from 0 to 20. The instructions for the Micromott say that its minimum speed is 5,000. I don't know. You judge. Does that seem like 5,000 to you? I don't know. It doesn't to me. It seems more like 500. But the truth is, I can't really prove that one way or the other. What I can tell you is that this thing will go lots faster. If I crank it all the way up to 20, now that thing is flying. So let's just do a little tiny bit of work here with it at its slowest speed, whatever that speed is. All right, I've just grabbed a random sprue that I had sitting here on my workbench, and I'm going to hog some material off of it. Now, the first thing you can see is that it wants to chatter a lot, but it's definitely not melting. Okay, it is just cutting chunks off of there. Now, why is it chattering? It's actually because I'm turning it too slow, and it just doesn't have enough time, or actually it has too much time, as each blade comes around and it basically just starts bouncing off of the material. So let's turn this thing up. Let's turn it up to whatever speed that is. Let's go for 10, just to make it a nice round number. And let's see what happens. Okay, see how much nicer it behaved automatically? It wasn't chattering and hopping around on me. Also notice that it did not, come on camera, focus, it did not melt the plastic. You can see that it's created a burr there, that fuzzy fringe that you see right there, but that is definitely not melted. All right, let's up the ante even more. Okay, let's go for full speed and see what happens. Look at how nice that is. That is by far the best behaved of all three situations. I mean, look at that. It just shaves that material right off of there. Super smooth, no melting. Now, I promise you, if I took this and I jammed it in there as hard as I could, that it definitely would start melting. More because it would clog up the burr than because it's dull. Because as soon as the burr gets filled up with gunk, then it's much more difficult for it to cut, and we go back to that friction problem. All right, so now I've changed it. I'm putting on this round bit, which is also pretty common. And let's say that I have a situation where maybe I wanted to smooth off an instrument panel so that I could glue a piece of photo etch on it. All right, so I'm gonna take off, if it'll focus for me, I'm gonna take off where it says Diopark right there. And there we go. Just like that. All gone, not melted, no problem. By the way, this Diopark, check out this sprue. How cool is this? I'm gonna do like a little review of this with the project I'm working on, but check out the little workbench tools in this Diopark set. I don't even know if this thing is available anymore. Somebody said that they had gone out of business. I got this off eBay from a supplier in Georgia, but how neat is that? I'm doing a little workshop diorama or vignette or whatever you want to call it. And that's why I got those, because I bought the Tamiya / Italeri 1/35th scale German maintenance crew set that has sprues in it with some tools and a wooden table and some oil drums and some things like that. And half of the sprues are old Italeri sprues, and the rest of them are Tamiya. And the Tamiya stuff is good, of course, but the Italeri stuff, which is all of the tools in the little set, are terrible. Now, the reason that I was running my mouth instead of showing you something is because I was changing bits. So now I've put in this dental burr, which I use a lot. Okay, that is a carbide dental burr. And this thing is super useful when you need to just shave off really small amounts of material. Like let's say, and in fact it is the case, that I'm going to have to change to a different vision system so I can see this. Not good to accidentally hit the foot pedal for the rotary tool when it's sitting in your lap. Fortunately, no harm was done. Anyway, you can see that this pair of bolt cutters has a little bit of a parting line along the edge, along the side of the handles, and I'd like to remove that. So here we go. Just like that at 20,000 RPM. Maybe I didn't make such a great job of it, but it's a demonstration, not a big deal on a part like this. Point being is I was turning this little monster at full speed and I didn't get any melting. Now, again, if I were to decide to, let's say I needed to actually cut out a space and I was going to just jam this thing through the material. Okay, I can do that, but as you can see, I've already got a little bit of melting on the tip because of course I have to apply a lot of pressure to poke it through there. So yeah, obviously I'm going to get a little bit of melting. Now what you do when this happens and your tool gets all clogged up, you just take this thing and you wash it off with Tamiya Extra Thin. Melts that styrene right off of there. Your tool is clean again and you are back and in business. So there you go. I hope you can see that it is in fact not true that 5,000 RPM is the upper limit, and that if you're careful and not super ham-fisted, oops, wrong place. Oh well, anyway. If you're careful and not super ham-fisted and don't just apply too much pressure, that you can go much, much higher than 20,000 RPM, and it may even be to your benefit to do that. All right, so there you go. Another Rube Goldberg Model Making Mythbusters episode. I hope you found that useful if you are thinking about using or buying a rotary tool. Anyway, it's just one of those little things. I think it's good to know. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you watching, and as always, much love.